Welcome to a full review of the new 2019 Kia Forte EX with the launch edition package on it. So basically, in other words, it's fully loaded. So why is this all new? In a world where sedans are apparently dying, SUVs are taking over, why did they decide to redesign it? Well, that's because the Kia Forte is their #1 selling car, next to the Kia Sorento, which is an SUV. But regardless, this is one of their best-selling vehicles. The truth is, you are actually buying sedans. Sedans are not dead. It's bad cars that are essentially dead. So under that consensus, let's move on to that exterior. Now, as for the exterior of the Kia Forte, this is actually one of my most favorite designs in the compact segment. This is a very mature and handsome looking vehicle, and it's one that, you know, compared to the other vehicles in this segment, doesn't look childish, at least in my opinion. This is one that I can definitely see myself driving around in, and I have been for the past week or so because I have to. But in all seriousness, this is definitely a great looking car in my opinion. And one of the first things you're gonna notice is actually this paint job. This paint job looks fantastic. This is nothing like the Kia Stinger. There's no issues here with the paint job. And speaking of the Stinger, Kia likes to claim that a lot of the design elements for this car came from the Stinger. And I can see it. I can see that this looks nothing like that car. So with that established, what I do see are somewhat Porsche-inspired headlights and Jaguar XE-ish taillights in the rear, both of which look fantastic, especially these headlights. I say Porsche, but to be honest, they're actually kind of like almost like a butterfly looking headlight, and I really do like it. Now, the only real exterior design element that I'm not so sure of and I'm not a huge fan of are actually the indicators on this vehicle and their placement for them. I don't know why they're so low and why they're separated from the headlight. It makes it kind of hard for other people to see them, you know, if you have the turn signal on. And in the rear, it's much the same, and that's also where the reverse lights are. So I don't know, I'm not really too sure about that, but whatever. It's a small thing because otherwise this looks really good, especially in this EX trim. A lot of this stuff is blacked out. That's supposed to be chrome, and it just gives it a great aggressive look to it. Now, I was ready to come in with the jokes here and make absolute fun of these tires that come standard with these cars, these cum-hos or whatever they're called. After I drove it, I quickly realized I should not ridicule these because these tires are surprisingly really good. In the time I spent driving it, I've been driving it rather hard, and as you can see, it's rather damp today. I have not heard a single bit of tire chirp coming out of this vehicle, so I'm really impressed with that. But these do come with the 17-inch wheels. These come standard from the S trim to this EX trim, and for this launch edition, what they do is they black it out. Whatever, you get the kind of blacked out machine finish wheels. Now, this vehicle does have the option of coming with 15-inch rims in the FE model, and also in the LXS trim, you can get 16-inch rims, which are machined, and they look rather good on this vehicle as well. So I'll talk more about that on the drive. Now that we're at the rear, you can see I'm not lying, this is the EX trim, but also you get to see these wonderful little taillights. These taillights, in my opinion, look really good on this car. It really finishes off the rear end. As you can see, this little light bar thing here, this thing does not light up at all, unfortunately. The Stinger had something similar to this, but it doesn't do anything here either. I wish it did light up, but oh well. You also have the little turn signal reverse light things, which I'm not so sure about. And also you have a single outlet exhaust, which I think looks really good on this vehicle as well, and a little lip spoiler for this trim level in the EX. Now, if you look inside of the trunk of this vehicle, there's enough space for an antelope and a pencil. So in other words, ample amounts of space, especially for this class of vehicle. I'm really impressed with the trunk space. Not too many intrusions either. The seats do fold 60/40 on this particular model, but it does not apparently fold down in the FE trim, in the base model, which I don't really understand that. Please fix that for the next model year, because if that's true. Even those of us who buy base model vehicles like some practicality in our vehicles. So it'd be nice to see that added on. Now, climbing inside of the brand new 2019 Kia Forte, the first thing that you're gonna notice is that they've made you happy. They made you real happy. And I'm talking about you, the buyers, because this thing is full of technology. Yes, even in the base trims. You get this 8-inch tablet, standard with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You get all the safety features standard on this vehicle. Now, what I like most about this company is that they listen, and what they do is they give you what you want. In this segment of a vehicle, let's be honest, it's going to be more younger people, you know, kids, well, really parents who buy these vehicles for their kids, either as a first car, even adults who just want, you know, cheap modes of transportation with a few nice amenities at a good price. They do a great job of offering that here. Their research show that, especially in the youth, they want tech. That's what they mainly want. And for that, they did have to sacrifice in certain areas, but in places where you're really not going to really notice. So this is kind of tried and true Kia Hyundai, fantastic infotainment. And you also have a few controls here with the steering wheel and with the inside the gauge cluster here. They've essentially given you a Mercedes S-Class levels of, you know, technology in here for this compact segment and priced vehicle. So you should be very thankful for them. Now, usually I'm not the biggest advocate for technology in vehicles, but I'll be honest, the Hyundai Kia stuff, you don't even need like a salesperson to walk you through this. This is so easy, intuitive, and very ergonomic and easy to get to. Some other great things about this vehicle. This climate control, they've finally done it right. And most car companies don't get this right. This is finally separated from this screen. So that means in most cars, when this screen goes out, so does your climate control. You lose all your functionality with the climate because most of it is integrated with the screen. This is one of the best, one of the easiest implementations of climate control, and I wish the other vehicles in the range shared the same thing. Now, being fully loaded, you get a few gimmicks like this wireless charger, which does work. I did use my iPhone 8 Plus and it does charge, but rather slowly. It's basically just there to tell your friends that you have wireless charging. Let's talk a little bit more about the actual interior, the fit and finish, the feel. What I'm really impressed with, even for this press car with about a little over 4,000 miles on it, everything feels so solid. Now, this is a vehicle I did drive in Pittsburgh when I went to the press event. That car felt solid, and so does this one. There's legitimately no creaks, no rattles. The build quality for this price point is impeccable. I love it, actually. Now, obviously, not everything can be wrapped in Italian leather and luxury. You will see some hard plastics down here. You know, the stuff that you don't touch or really see. Yeah, that's some hard plastic. But honestly, should that bother you? No, it really should not, because the places that you do touch and really look at, that you do come in contact with, like this, the center console thing and the door pockets here. Sorry, not the door pocket, like the thing that you rest your arm on. That's all soft padded material, so that's great. Now, one complaint I do have is, what is this black stuff doing all over this material that gets fingerprints all over and dust and particles? I don't understand what that's doing inside of a vehicle. You see a huge sea of it right here near the door handle. High traffic area. The best material, and I don't know why car manufacturers don't use it, is this like silver aluminum plastic thing. This material is amazing. It doesn't have fingerprints. It looks great. It looks expensive. I don't know why you can't just throw that all over the interior. I don't know. This material, I don't know why that's there. Seats, not bad. They're pretty bolstered, so they do keep you in place. At first, when I saw them, I thought they were cloth seats, but actually they are the leatherette. And the benefit of these seats, from what I can tell, is they seem to be very easy to clean. So if you have a little accident in here, you spill some Tim Hortons in here, you should be fine. You should just be able to take a paper towel and just wipe that off. No big issues. Overall, I would give this cabin a high score in both quality and fit and finish. So with that, let's roll inside that back seat and see what that's like. Hi, you join me in the back seat. Now, with the seat set to my setting, I'm about 5'11". I have no issues getting in and out of this vehicle, and once I am in, I have plenty of knee room and leg room. I can definitely sit back here for an extended amount of time. An interesting thing I noted about these rear seats is, much like my Genesis G80 that I used to own, the rear seats seem to be a little bit more padded than it is in the front. So, you know, passenger comfort is rather high in this vehicle. You do get the classic, you know, thing in the middle that drops down. You have your two little cup holders in here. Like I mentioned, well, actually, no, I don't think I mentioned this. There is no pass-through to get to things in the trunk, but like I said, you can fold these seats 60/40, at least in the higher trim vehicles. So there is that. And the sense of solidity does continue in the rear. There is no real creaks, rattles, nothing like that. And best part, I think, you do get a little bit of ventilation in the rear, which is nice to see, especially in this compact segment. So with that, how about we take a look under the hood of this vehicle and let's take it finally out for a drive. what do we have here? It's the new 2019 Kia Forte 4-cylinder 2.0. Would you look at that? This magnificent heart of an engine is what powers the almighty Forte. Now, this engine isn't really new, but it does run on the Atkinson cycle, which means, well, that's typically used in a hybrid vehicle. But in this application, this thing gets some seriously good MPG. I'm really impressed with it. And I'm not talking about what the piece of paper says. I'm talking about real world. And at the same time, this engine is really rather adequate, more than adequate for the road, actually. This engine produces about 147 horsepower and 132 pounds-feet of torque. Now, the reason why I love this motor so much is because there is no turbos, there is no weird hybrid system thing, there is no direct injection. Basically, there is no problems. This is a more basic port injected 4-cylinder. Now, I think it was back in like 2014 or something, the Volkswagen Passat announced that it was gonna get rid of its 5-cylinder, it's gonna throw in a 4-cylinder with a turbo in there, and a lot of other companies started to copy this, or I don't know who really started it, but I honestly, when I first heard about this, I thought car companies had lost their minds. I thought, why would a car company put a turbo inside of a essentially practical 4-door vehicles that people are going to buy for longevity and reliability? When you put a turbo in something, it just destroys all of that, adds all kinds of complexity. On top of that, they direct inject it. It just made no sense to me, because now basically all the cars became throwaway, lease vehicles that you pretty much update, every time you get a new iPhone. Now, this vehicle being so simple, this will definitely last. Now, a lot of people, they buy cars like this, they keep it for a long time, they pass it down to their kids. You can actually do that with this car. I don't see this causing too many issues. Plus the fact that it comes with a manual transmission, it's finally a more back to the basics, reliable vehicle, and this engine is being used in other applications like the new Kia Soul, the 2020, and the Veloster 2.0. They all use this basic motor, so that's really good to see. So there's that option of reliability for the mainstream customer, so that's good. Now, other juicy changes, the transmission. It is a IVT, which is a glorified CVT. Now, I know you heard this in many other reviews, and you're going to hear from me as well. This is the best CVT transmission ever created. So good, in fact, that this car actually deserves paddle shifters. Yes, it is that good. I don't think a CVT has ever been praised this much by the press. So really impressive transmission. It also aids in the amazing fuel efficiency that this vehicle gets. Also, what's helping this vehicle is that even in this fully loaded trim, this car never exceeds 3,000 pounds. This is like 2,900 pounds. And if you get an FE base model with the manual, that'll shave another 200 pounds. So that's about 2,700 pounds. So it's a really light and nimble vehicle. I enjoy that. And I love the fact that they still keep the manual, despite the fact that it only equates to about 5% of their sales. So really nice to see that they still do care about the enthusiast market. Now, the last and final thing I'm going to mention before we go on this drive is the beam in the back. There is a torsion beam. There is no multi-link in this vehicle. We'll see on the drive how that affects things, but really they haven't killed off the multi-link. The multi-link will be available, but in where? It's going to be available in the Forte GT, which is essentially like the Elantra Sport, if you will, with the Kia Forte version of it. So that's going to have the 1.6 turbo with the 200 horsepower. And that vehicle, it does use the multi-link. So what they're doing is, because SUVs are, let's be honest, taking over, they're putting all the good stuff like multi-links in cars like the Elantra Sports, the Forte GTs, and stuff like LSDs in cars like the Veloster Ns and not the regular Veloster turbos. You have to step up to more sporty variants of the vehicle so they can charge more money so you can get the good stuff. So that's really the story with the torsion beam, but we'll see how all of this comes together in the drive. So let's go. Well, setting off in the new 2019 Kia Forte. The first thing that I had noticed with this vehicle is I cannot believe that they left me with such a monster of a vehicle without a crash helmet, roll bar, none of these things. It's unbelievable. I mean, this thing is, okay, it's adequate. It is very adequate for the streets. The engine, 147 horsepower, 132 foot-pounds of torque. It's not gonna well, let's just say it's not going to blow you out the sunroof, but it will definitely get the job done. It never feels unsafe. It doesn't feel like it's going to bog down on a highway. It's a very adequate amount of power for what this is. It doesn't weigh anything. I mean, it's like less than 3,000 pounds. I mean, it's more than enough to carry this vehicle, without any issues, really. Also, the brakes. Ooh. Oh, yeah. So the brakes, they're not like an on-off switch. It's, like most vehicles, at least nowadays, they electronically brake boosted, so you get all the bite up front. In this vehicle, you have to kind of, put your foot into it a little bit, and I like that. That's how a brake pedal should feel, like just jerk off doing. So brakes are very good, and they're actually one of the best in the segment. Actually, they do, if you want to look at some spec sheets, this does stop really rather well. It's like low 100 feet or something like that from 60. I don't know, something like that. You can look it up, but they feel good. And like I was saying before, the engine is really rather potent. You should not have any issues with this engine at all. Relatively smooth. Now, when you do rev it out, there's quite a bit of engine noise that comes through, like most cars in this segment, and it's not the most pleasant sounding, but it is what it is. It's other 4-cylinders in this segment don't sound much better, but what does sound really good is 31.6 miles to the gallon. Now that is impressive, considering the fact that I did not give this car a break whatsoever. In the last few days that I owned this car, I was absolutely pounding this thing. And like at the very worst, like you can get maybe high 20s in this car, which is absolutely amazing, I think. You can easily get 40 miles to the gallon in this thing, especially on the highway. Miles per gallon, I'm really impressed with. This is a very efficient vehicle. The engine, the Atkinson cycle thing, it's doing its job very well. This IVT, CVT thing, I think it's done a great job keeping this car being a very efficient machine. And it is rather eager to rev out, isn't it? And as you saw a little demonstration, this IVT, CVT thing, whatever, it's like I was saying before, this thing actually deserves to have some paddle shifters on this thing, because it does, this manual mode, it's actually rather good. And it does simulate gears pretty well. And it shifts pretty damn fast. I can't believe like how well this transmission is programmed. And when you leave it in auto mode, it's pretty smooth. It never really bothered me. Occasionally you'll feel the rubber bandiness of a CVT. That's just classic CVT behavior. Also, this vehicle does have the 3 drive modes. Granted, I do drive around in normal and smart mode for the most part. The good thing about this is that it actually kind of remembers your last drive mode setting. So if you drive around in smart mode and you turn the car off and you turn it back on again, it'll actually still be in smart mode. I do wish that the Stinger did that as well, because that would have been a nice little feature. Now, this is the Kia Forte. It is not a Hyundai Elantra. This is the sporty version of the, Kias in general are rather sporty compared to the Hyundai counterparts. And this thing, it does fulfill that quite well. This thing, for instance, it turns in on a dime. This thing, like the slightest input, will have this thing changing directions. It's not something that you usually see in the compact car segment. Usually all these things feel like slush boxes, but this, no, this is rather nice to drive. And I've even had it through some rough pavement, and it's rather composed. It's a confidence-inspiring vehicle. Now, the other thing about the steering is, for me, I would like to have it rather, a little bit toned down. Some people might love the fact that this thing just steers like with a millimeter of input. Some people might like that. Actually, I think most people think that that's what proper steering is supposed to feel like. It's not, and also I could live with having a little bit more toned down. That's why I was saying that the base models like the FE or the LXS or something like that with 15 and 16 inch rims, that would naturally kind of make the steering a little bit slower. I know 17 inches isn't huge for a rim, but the 15 would make this a little bit more natural feeling. I know that probably doesn't make sense to the mainstream who just wants 45 inch rims on a Civic, but this is the truth. Smaller wheels, smaller rims anyway, make for a better experience on the road. Now, the other benefit of having those smaller wheels is a better ride. Now, this Forte, I know it has a torsion beam, but I've had it through some really rough pavement, and honestly, it's really rather composed. The rear end, usually with these torsion beams, they get a little bit out of hand, but in this vehicle, even through the roughest of gutters and potholes, it's held up really rather well, and to the point where most people actually wouldn't really even know that this is a torsion beam suspension. They actually did a really good job with it. Now, would it be nice to see a multi-link? Yeah, of course it would be nice to see that, but that's going to be reserved for the higher trim, Forte GTs and the sport models pretty much. But for what this is, I will say this does ride better than the Kia Stinger, which is shocking because that's the real luxury GT car. But to be fair, this does ride a little bit more harsh than the other cars in the segment. Now, is that a bad thing? Depends on who you are. It doesn't really bother me. You can easily daily drive this thing. It's comfortable. It's still comfortable enough to, well, obviously the Stinger I personally thought was pretty comfortable, and this is even a little bit better than that. So I can definitely live with it. It's something that you should probably check out though, if you're a little bit more sensitive to ride quality. For me, it's fine, but I guess it could be softened up a little bit more, and that's why I was mentioning the whole, base model thing. Jeez, this thing has so much grip. I was getting ready to come in with all the jokes and just completely ridicule these tires, but they're really rather good. I'm not gonna, these Kumhos or whatever they're called, the Majestic Kumho, I don't know what these things are called, but they're holding up really rather well, especially in these damp conditions. And it is a really rather confidence-inspiring car. I have to say, I don't get this feeling out of most compact cars. No matter what the condition is, it just always feels solid. There's a great sense of solidity with this car, and even at high speeds, even at freeway speeds, damp conditions, pounding it around, it's really rather good. Now, for this price point, it's got some, a bit more, road noise and tire noise and all that stuff, but honestly, it's really not that bad. I think the best part about this vehicle that I can't really say for most of the cars in this segment is the fact that there's some kind of emotion to this car. It doesn't feel like an appliance to drive. It actually has some feel to it. It has a fun factor to it. I don't know if that's a combination of how light and nimble it is, but it does genuinely have a feeling that it has a soul. And no, this is not the Kia Soul, but it feels like it likes to be pushed around. The engine likes to be revved out. It's a feeling that this car likes to be pushed. So, and with all the confidence that you have in it, you feel like you want to push it as well as a driver. So those are really high remarks for a car of this segment. In this segment that's pretty much, let's be honest, filled with appliances, this car, I think the best thing about it is that it doesn't feel like one. I think that's the best compliment I can give this car, is that it doesn't feel like a driving appliance. It actually feels like a car that wants to be driven, that encourages you to drive it hard. The engine, all of it, it likes to be revved out. It feels playful, it feels happy to do that. So I think overall, with the level of drivability that it has and the livability that it has, it is still a practical four-door vehicle that gets great gas mileage. I think this is going to be a fun little daily driver for you. I would encourage you to test out the manual and the LXS trims with the slightly, smaller wheels on it. I think you might find a little bit more joy in that, and you can save a lot more money. A lot of the stuff are gimmicks anyway. You don't really need it. I know that's why they made this car. It's because you said that you wanted all those things, but try this car without some of that stuff and see how you feel about it, because this is definitely one to put on the short list. Definitely give it a drive. And for those who have already bought the vehicle or owners of this car, leave your thoughts down in the comments. Do you still love the car? Has it lost its luster for you? Because I only get to spend a week with this car. You've actually, presumably if you're an owner, you've had this car for a few months, so it would definitely help out people in the comment section who are actually looking for this car to know your thoughts as well. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time to move on to the conclusions. So wrapping up my time with the Kia Forte. The Forte is a good car, and I think most people who have driven the vehicle will agree with me, especially on first impressions. I like the fact that Kia actually listens and they've given the consumer what they've wanted here with, you know, tech, safety, and Apple CarPlay's 8-inch tablets, all that stuff. So I think it's really awesome that they do care. And I've actually even met a lot of the PR people and just people who work at Kia in general, and they are real car enthusiasts, and it shows because this vehicle, one of my personal favorite things about it is that it doesn't feel like an appliance. It is a relatively fun to drive car. It's nimble, it handles well. I enjoy driving it. Now, unlike its sister company Hyundai, Kia doesn't focus primarily on the comfort. They do genuinely care about the drivability, and I personally think that's cool. So for the people who do want that extra, you know, vigor to their compact vehicle, Kia does offer you the Forte. Now, if you want a little bit more comfort, the Elantra is also a great choice. So you have some options. I personally really like the Forte. I know this is subjective, but I also really love the way it looks, and that puts this vehicle for me on really the short list because the looks do matter for me, and this does have a small luxury car look to it. So I've enjoyed the Forte, and I think most will, but the owners of this vehicle have had it for a few months. Let me know what you think of the vehicle. Just leave your thoughts down in the comment section below, and I would love to read them. And with that, guys, that concludes this review on the Forte. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found some value in it, and I will see you on the next video. Thank you, and goodbye.